Coming in at number 5, Ronove. In demonology, Ronove is a Marquis and Great Earl of Hell, commanding 20 legions of demons. He is said to teach art, rhetoric, languages, and gives good and loyal servants and their favor of friends and foes. He is often depicted as a monster holding a staff, without detailing his appearance. In other writings, he is described as a taker of old souls, often coming to Earth to harvest souls of decrepit humans and animals near death. He is often depicted as a monster with an ugly face and a long monkey-like tail holding a staff. There is clearly very little documented about Ronove other than the fact that he is a Marquis and Great Earl of Duchesne, commanding 19 legions of demons. This dude is not to be messed with, and if you love your old relatives, you would not want him to be real. Coming in at number 4, Ammon. Ammon, also known as Alman and Nahum in demonology, is a Marquis of Hell who is said to govern 40 infernal legions. Now the name Ammon comes from the god Amun, from the god Bahal Ammon of Carthage. According to the dictionary Infernal by Colin de Plancy, he commands 40 legions of demons and carries the title of Prince. He is also an entity many look to reconcile friends and foes, and procure love for those seeking it. I quote, Ammon or Ammon is a great and mighty Marquis, and cometh abroad in the likeness of a wolf, having serpent's tail, vomiting flames of fire, when he putteth on the shape of a man. He sheweth out dog's teeth, and a great head like to a mighty nighthawk. He is the strongest prince of all other, and understandeth of all things past and to come. He procureth favour, and reconcileth both friends and foes, and ruleth 40 legions of devils. Yeah, shooketh. There is little else known about the demon Ammon other than the simple fact that he is not to be messed with. Coming in at number 3, we have Asmodeus. This demon, Asmodeus, is the demon of carnal desire, or as we like to call it, lust, and is to be considered the prince of all demons. If you're a man, you should be safe because he likes to fixate on one woman, often one that was married, and strikes before the consummation begins after the wedding night. The story goes that this happens to one woman 7 times, and on her 8th husband, because you know Asmodeus can be very jealous and wants that woman all to himself, so he becomes rageful and takes out the competition. So anyways, on the 8th husband, to defend himself, he had put some fish guts on hot coals, and the fire alarm started. It scared Asmodeus so greatly that he fled and went to a whole different country. So this is ideal for his victims because he is so easy to defeat. He is pretty much a scaredy cat. Asmodeus also hates birds and water because apparently they remind him of God. Regardless if you're being possessed and you're like, nah, I'm over it, then chase some birds, maybe on a beach. I know seagulls love hanging out there. Do some fishing or go for a dip in the ocean or your local pool, and poof, your demon is gone. Asmodeus is pretty popular in mainstream media as well, appearing on the hit show Lucifer, being the Prince of Hell, and is also the main antagonist in the horror film series Paranormal Activity. Asmodeus is also featured in many books, most popularly the Tales of Tartarus, and the whole book is based on the demon himself. Lucky. And he also comes up a lot in the very popular game Dungeons and Dragons. So if you're going to summon a demon just for fun of it, I would definitely lean towards Asmodeus, or if you're too scared, just go check him out and all the hits he is featured in. Coming in at number 2, we have Belphegor. Belphegor is a very famous literary figure. In fact, he stars in the 1960 play The Marriage of the Devil, written by John Wilson. And fun fact, his sacrificial offering is excrement, so it's very easy to summon him, whether you want to or not. Some fun facts about Belphegor are that a 1970s Polish utility airplane named their plane after him because of the strange look of it, and the noise the engine made. He also appears in the final season of the hit TV show Supernatural, as well as being a reoccurring character in the popular video game series Megami Tensei, and there is even a death metal band from Austria that is named after the demon. Belphegor is tempted by laziness and is the chief demon of one of the deadly sins known as sloth. It is also said that he taunts men in hell by telling them the only true reason they're there is because their wives have sent them there. Belphegor goes above and beyond to prove that there is such a thing as a happy marriage and that men are just weak and sinful and continue to wander Earth looking to find a happy marriage. Satan actually named Belphegor the ambassador of France, and he is the strongest in April, so maybe if you're going to book a trip to France, make sure you book it for the month of April, and if you're lucky enough to get possessed by Belphegor, definitely make a Reddit thread or put it somewhere on the internet so I can read it. And finally, in at number 1, we have Paimon. Paimon is one of the kings of Jinnistan, and he is more obedient to Lucifer than any other king. Not only that, but he is so powerful that he has over 200 legions of demons under his rule. When it comes to what Paimon looks like, he is depicted as a man with the face of a woman, wearing a crown with many precious stones on it and riding a dromedary camel camel. Like other demons on this list, Paimon is a teacher, and he can teach you all about the arts, philosophy, and sciences, but the best of all, if you get possessed by this demon, he has the ability to tell you all secrets. He can reveal to you all the mysteries of the earth. Any questions you have, Paimon has the ability to answer them, along with the questions about the mind and wind and water. I know there are so many questions we all have about why we are here, what our purposes are there, aliens, and so much more. So anything you are curious about, just ask Paimon. This demon is the most powerful, and some of his other powers, I know what you're thinking, how can he have more abilities than I've already talked about? Well, there are more, and they include the knowledge of past and future events, clearing up doubts, making spirits appear, creating visions, acquiring and dismissing servant spirits, reanimating the dead for several years, and has the ability to fly. So if you want to get possessed by him, I don't even know why at this point, you'll become more knowledgeable and be taught more by this demon than anyone could possibly teach you on this earth. If you get lucky enough to be possessed by this demon, leave a comment down below.
Coming in number 5, we've got Pisachus. Out of all the demons created by Brahma, these ones are probably the worst of all. They take the cake, no problem. They take the meat, rotten flesh, bones, and other assorted once living food too. Pisachus love to eat, and they will stop at nothing to get a meal. Their preferred food is human flesh, though it doesn't seem to matter if it's alive, dead, or even fresh. As long as they get to eat people, they're happy. Knowing this, most folks would do well to stay as far away as possible from these things. Their taste for people meat isn't all that makes them horrifying though. Pisachus have all sorts of dark and doom-ridden abilities, ready to ruin lives at the earliest opportunity. Anywhere there's an abundance of human corpses, you can find one of these demons. Whether that means a graveyard, a charnel house, or the site of a recent massacre. Once they get their fill of corpse meat, they'll go about trying to infect humans who are still alive. They're known for passing on debilitating and deadly diseases to unfortunate victims, and even instilling bouts of horrid madness into others. So even if you survive one, the other might get you. The madness only serves to double down on their goals, as folks who lose their minds will often attack fellow humans, and attacks by madmen aren't often clean cut either. Pisachus love to haunt areas in which violent deaths occurred, making this a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more deaths, the more Pisachus. The more Pisachus, the more disease and madness, the more deaths. And so on, and so on, and so on. Forests in India are said to be flush with these demons too, so watch out. People seem to think that carrying a piece of very pure iron helps in warding them off, so give it a try if you've got some hiking to do. Alternatively, you can carry around the leaves of a neem tree, as this seems to do the trick as well. The folks who have to be the most careful are pregnant women, as Pisachus love to eat their flesh, a little mother-offspring combo. Yeesh. Coming at number 4, we've got the Cauchemar. My French is a little rusty, so hopefully I'm pronouncing this correctly. If not, let me know in the comments. Regardless of how I say this demon's name, it is unpleasant and horrifying. This French name for a European demon is found in many different stories, usually referring to a leaping, jumping, sleep-eating beast. The idea of a sleep paralysis demon is pervasive, with many different iterations appearing across all sorts of different cultures. This one in particular is extra nasty though. Most sleep paralysis demons will simply sit upon your chest, rendering you immobile and terrified. The Cauchemar will jump right onto your ribs, causing quite the jolt and possibly even some pain. From there, it reverts back to classic sleep paralysis demon behavior, complete with night terrors and the everlasting feeling of being able to do nothing about your predicament. It's not a good way to spend your night. See, this is why I don't sleep on my back. If my face is in the pillow, this demon can't hurt me, or so I think. The Cauchemar will often return many times during the night over the course of many weeks. This can result in folks losing a whole lot of beauty rest, slowly losing energy, and becoming permanently fatigued. As time goes on, people targeted by the Cauchemar will also start to refuse to sleep, staying up for days at a time. This, as we all know, is a recipe for disaster. Not sleeping for extended periods of time will make folks irritable, irrational, and possibly even cause hallucinations. Hell, in the case of people harboring sand demons, they might even become a merciless killer with no regard for human life. There are ways to counteract this though, like putting shoes beside your bed facing out, or in more extreme cases, placing iron nails inside of your mattress. The Princess and the Pea, this is not. Has anyone ever slept on a bed of nails? I personally have laid down upon one at Science North, but that was for about 10 seconds and they retracted the nails before I got up. Maybe it is worth it to avoid being visited by this terrible creature. Coming in at number 3, we've got Doris. Back to some movie magic for a moment, Doris is the exceptionally upsetting demon featured in Blumhouse's Ouija series. She turned out to be the main villain in the first one, and then the prequel explores her tragic backstory. Demons with sad stories are always the worst, eh? You want to sympathize with them, but then they're out here trying to kill everyone and singing sad songs. It's a whole mess. Doris had her mouth sewed shut by her mother to prevent evil spirits and voices from taking over, and eventually passed on, becoming one of these presences summoned by the board. Once she became a demon, Doris possessed many people. Anyone foolish enough to summon her using a board would be taken over and killed in horrific ways. Doris will make people hang from Christmas lights by their own doing, or put their heads through porcelain sinks. That's gotta hurt, and there's no coming back from that kind of head trauma. There's some swimming pool antics, some stitch-mouthed ghost antics, the whole 9 yards. Even though Doris was just a girl, as a demon she has a whole lot of anger and terror to express. And what better way to express your demonic urges than through a killing spree? Sounds like fun. So if you'd like to keep your bathroom pristine and your head unmunched, stay away from that Ouija board. Coming in at number 2, we've got Shush. This one comes from another supposedly true tale where average folks messed with a board and paid the price. Everyone knows how embarrassing it can be to be shushed, especially by a stranger. So what about a paranormal stranger? One with the potential to shut you up for good? It doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun if I'm being totally honest, but that's exactly what happened here. Two friends decided to take a swing at some Ouija board antics and plopped one down on their table. They tried for a little while to contact any sort of presence, but came up short. After asking a few more questions, they returned to the top, asking questions like, "Is there anyone here that would like to communicate with us?" This apparently was the last straw, as the planchette immediately moved to no. Thinking this was their chance to finally talk with someone from the other side, they pushed further, asking more questions. But the presence did not appreciate this and used the planchette to spell out S-H-U-S-H. Shush. Holy moly, it just wanted some peace and quiet. After this, the room felt considerably colder, and the pals didn't want to see what would happen if they didn't follow the presence's instructions. Something tells me it wouldn't have been pleasant. I could see a demon stealing someone's voice, or permanently sealing their mouth for not being quiet when told. So who wants to play the quiet game? I'll start. Coming at number 1, we've got Zozo. Now, you know we couldn't do a Ouija demon list without including one of the newest and most prolific entries into the ghostly pop culture oeuvre. Zozo seemingly hasn't been around that long, and his popularity is largely attributed to internet culture gassing him up. There might be brief mentions of this demon in assorted old compendiums and grimoires, but nothing concrete, and the old writings don't really connect him to Ouija boards or possession either. But Zozo is a famous demon now, and those tend to do exactly what people expect them to do. The more we discuss him, the stronger and more bold he grows. Many who have encountered this demon feel its presence for years after the fact, regardless of whether they close the session or not. One tale recounts a man almost seeing his drown in the bathtub, attacked by Zozo. Others say that the demon acts like a poltergeist, ruining their homes and injuring them frequently. If your planchette moves from Z to O to Z to O, yes, I am Canadian, say goodbye and throw it in a fire. Nothing good will come from any further interaction. Can you still buy Ouija boards at Toys R Us? Well, their bankruptcy might prove to be a bigger barrier than the actual availability of the board, but still. I've always wondered if spirits knew the difference between mass-produced boards and special ones. I suppose you could just make one on a sheet of paper and go from there, even on your wall, Stranger Things style. Coming in at number 5, we've got Doris's Demon. Damn, Doris, where'd you get this demon? There are all sorts of different accounts as to how this possession went down, but if you take Doris and her children at their word, it's hard to ignore what happened. Back in the early 1970s, the home of Doris Blyther came under attack by a plethora of ghosts and demons. This seemingly average house in Culver County, California suddenly teemed with paranormal events, many of which traumatized poor Doris. A single mother taking care of 4 kids, Doris was having a good deal of trouble on her own. Add in a history of abusive and violent relationships between Doris, her parents, and partners, and you can see how life might have been tough. Doris claimed that she was being assaulted by the ghosts in her house, and this was corroborated by one of her children. They could remember hearing their mother being attacked and violated by these spirits and didn't know what to do about it. The kids also remember being attacked by invisible presences, scratching, pulling, biting, and slapping. Skeptics looking into the case point to her history of abuse and alcoholism as major factors in these events, saying she likely wasn't being attacked by ghosts, but instead in some sort of terrible fugue state. But when a team of paranormal investigators came in, they found some strange and compelling evidence. unexplainable bruising all over Doris's body, ghost orbs throughout the house, and other possibly paranormal activity made it seem as though there could be real demons hanging around. However, Doris and her family did eventually leave, apparently taking these demons with them. Subsequent residents in the house did not report any such activity, and Doris claimed that these presences actually followed her after she left. All of these events were drawn upon by author Frank de Folida, who wrote a book called The Entity, and this tome would later be used as the basis for a feature film of the same name. Now, get this. During the filming of the movie, a young actor fell and broke his arm. He was playing the part of one of Doris's sons who had broken his arm in a similar manner while living at the house. They claimed they were thrown by some unseen entity, so maybe there's a connection here after all. Coming in at number 4, we've got the Changeling. There are many tales of demons and monsters throughout history. Folklore from all over features different entities meant to scare any who come across them. One particularly prevalent figure in such tales is that of the Changeling, an inhuman presence used to replace a human child. It's a very scary notion, don't you think? Your kid, who you're watching grow and change and become a fully developed person, gets replaced by something almost impossible to detect. What can you do at that point? This idea is explored in a bunch of different ways, from old fairy tales to particularly recent movies like The Hole in the Ground. But if we look back to the 80s, there's another tale of changelings that seems to be based on true events. A movie, The Changeling, was released and claimed to have been based on true events. Martin Scorsese lauded it as one of the scariest horror movies of all time. Russell Hunter, playwright and musician, had been living in the Henry Treat Rogers mansion in Denver, Colorado. While here, he discovered an abundance of creepy details. The cheap rent and exquisite architecture came at a cost, of course. During his stay, Hunter experienced plenty of paranormal happenings, from noises without obvious origin to poltergeist activity to, most interestingly, a secret room. Apparently, in this hidden chamber, Hunter found a diary penned by a young boy who was trapped there for an extended period of time. Through reading the diary and following some of the clues left behind, he ended up finding the remains of said young boy, who had seemingly been locked away by his parents. Tragic and terrifying for sure. Hunter then sought out a medium who came and investigated the mansion. Through this investigation, it was discovered that the spirit of the boy had remained in the house for almost a century and was behind much of the paranormal activity. Later, while the mansion was being bulldozed to make way for a high-rise, a bulldozer operator was killed in a freak accident. Could that have something to do with the mansion's history? Was the boy replaced by his family, doomed to rot within the walls of the mansion? Or was there a more supernatural replacement going on? Of course, the movie dramatizes a good deal of what happened, but the fact that it was based on the experiences of Hunter while he stayed at the mansion so rich in history is cause enough to be intrigued. He says that the hauntings did actually follow him even after the mansion was demolished.
Coming in at 3, Allah. Originating from pre-Slavic and Slavic mythology, Allah is a female demon recorded in the folklore of Bulgarians, Macedonians, and Serbs. They are considered demons of bad weather, whose main purpose is to lead hail-producing thunderclouds in the direction of fields, vineyards, or orchards to destroy the crops or loot and take them away. Allah also likes to eat children, though their gluttony is not limited to Earth, which is interesting. It is believed that Allah sometimes tries to devour the sun or the moon, in turn causing eclipses, and would result in the end of the world should they succeed. When folks encounter Allah, their mental or physical health are in peril. However, favor can be gained by approaching them with respect. If you approach with respect, Allah is known to save your life whenever necessary and make you rich. They do have one weakness though: eagles. They are incredibly afraid of eagles. Now, their appearance has changed throughout history, with some saying they look like ravens, others like clouds or dark winds, or even snakes or female dragons. They are also believed to live in lakes, springs, clouds, unreachable mountains, forests, caves, or even gigantic trees. Coming in at number 2, Pontianak. Hailing from Indonesian mythology, Pontianak are female demons who die during childbirth and become undead as a result. These demons are said to scare people, mostly men, and then rip out their internal organs with their claws before feasting on them. They are usually depicted as pale-skinned women with long black hair, red eyes, and white dresses smeared in blood, but they are also said to be able to take on a beautiful human appearance since they prey on men and helpless people. Now, in folklore, they typically arise at full moon and announce their presence through high-pitched baby cries. Very creepy indeed. If the cry is soft, it means that the Pontianak is near, and if it is loud, then she is far. Confusing, I know. Some even believe that if one hears a dog howling at night, it means the Pontianak is far, but if a dog is whining, that means the Pontianak is nearby. Now, it is said that if one has his eyes open when a Pontianak is near, she will suck them out of the victim's head. They are also known to locate their victims by sniffing out the hanging hanging laundry outside. For this reason, some Malaysians refuse to leave any piece of clothing outside of their home overnight. I respect that. They also have been compared to vampires, however they do what they do more out of vengeance rather than necessity or sustenance. Either way, I'm glad these suckers aren't real. That would suck. And finally coming in at number 1, Lady Medea. Hailing from Slavic mythology, Lady Medea, also known as Polutnitsa, is a mythical character and a noon demon. She is often depicted as a young woman dressed in white that roams field bounds. Lady Medea will often make herself evident in the middle of a hot summer's day. She will then take the form of a whirling dust cloud and carry a scythe or shear. She will then stop people in the field to ask them difficult questions or engage them in conversation. Now here's where things get spooky. If anyone fails to answer a question or tries to change the subject, she will cut off their head or strike them with their illness. She may also appear to people as an old hag, a beautiful woman, or even a 12-year-old girl. Now what makes this demon interesting is the simple fact that she is the personification of heat stroke, and can also give people insanity or heat sickness in lieu of decapitation. Now in Wendish mythology, she is known as Mittagsfrau among German speakers of Eastern Germany. She also appears in North and West Germany, often making children disappear when they search for flowers in and among the tall grain plants on hot summer's day. She's bad news bears, and I'm grateful this demoness does not exist. But to be fair, she doesn't concern me because I don't go outside. What is summer? Coming in at number 5 we have Ronove. Ronove is a demon that you could learn a lot from, and he goes by the name of Ronove. This demon is a Marquis and Great Earl of Hell who commands 20 legions of demons, so he's a great leader. There isn't too much known about Ronove's appearance, only that he is depicted as a monster holding a staff, but let's not judge a book by its cover. When possessed, he instructs you about the art of rhetoric, which is the effective and persuasiveness of speaking and writing in order to captivate your audience, as well as other compositional techniques. It's basically being able to go up in front of the class and make a compelling argument, or the ability to tell a story and bring the audience in. In that case, we don't need school, we just all need to be possessed by Ronove. As well as teaching you all these great things, he also insists you to insinuate yourself into other people's good graces, which is definitely a great thing to do. As long as you're not old and frail, you shouldn't be afraid of this demon. But he does have a little bit of a dark side. He's known as the taker of old souls, and when Ronove is done exploring our world and wants to return to his, he is going to inhabit an older, sickly person on the verge of passing away and take them with him. But hey, we can't blame him, we all have a little bit of a dark side. Let's focus on the positive though. Along with teaching so many great things to those he possesses, he also teaches art, languages, and is a giver to his loyal servants. Coming in at number 4 we have Agarus. Agarus is considered to be a great Duke of Hell and was summoned by King Solomon. Not only is he powerful, but he is pretty knowledgeable as well. Agarus can be a man or a woman. If he is a man, he looks old and riding a crocodile. Another accounts say that he can be seen carrying a hawk on his fist, and when he is a woman, she's young and beautiful. Along with many other demons, Agarus is a teacher, and I promise you will learn more being possessed by him than any other demon. Humans tend to let Agarus in to visit or be fully possessed because he is very convincing and he feeds off of the knowledge and power he can get from you. So you know you're intelligent and powerful when Agarus comes your way. Kind of an ego boost if you ask me, and I am here for it. Also, if you have an enemy, Agarus has the ability to start earthquakes and also grants noble titles, so you could end up being a prince or princess after your encounter. Another really cool thing Agarus does to those who are possessed by them is that he will teach you every language in the world, especially curse words, which is super fun. If you get lucky enough to be possessed by the demon Agarus, you will have enough knowledge for a lifetime.
Filling out our number 3 spot, we have the Ancient Ones. This ancient race of beings has lived on Earth much longer than humans. They sleep under the earth, requiring blood from ritual sacrifices in order to stay sleeping for another year. If the ritual fails, then they will wake up and destroy humanity. This threat is very real, as they are gargantuan lava-like beasts with powers us lowly humans couldn't even hope to understand. It's hard to argue with power like that. Depicted in The Cabin in the Woods, it is implied that at one point appeasing these bloodthirsty demons was easy. This is no longer the case, as their entertainment requirements have evolved over time. They are sadistic and cruel, forcing humans to bend to their whims. In order to remain dormant, they demand sacrifices and complex rituals, requiring humans to die in violent and painful ways. If there isn't enough suffering, they won't be satisfied. In order to slake this thirst for blood, the organization and multiple world governments have worked together in a sort of global conspiracy to keep them at bay. They sick monsters on human youth in horrible scenarios, very similar to the plots of horror movies. These monsters are manifestations of the Ancient One's desires for the punishment of young folk. Their almost unimaginable power could be a possible nod to the Cthulhu mythos, or maybe the Greek Titans. However, the most generally agreed upon theory is that they are a meta representation of the film-going public, always demanding more blood, guts, and violence in their horror movies. They've seen it all, and they need the genre to constantly evolve, potentially filling it with cliches and decadence. This theory makes the most sense to me, as I've seen what goes on in the comments section, and it is very clear that you folks out there will never be satisfied. I'm just waiting for the sacrifices to begin. Coming in at number 2, we have Mammon. Mammon wasn't originally a demon, but instead an ancient term for money or riches, and honestly, that's as likely to destroy the world as any demon. Over time, this idea has evolved, and Mammon became the demon of avarice, greed, and wealth. One of Satan's sons, this demon has been portrayed in many different ways with vastly different powers. This variety is where I attribute most of Mammon's power. There are just so many versions who are powerful in their own way. In Spencer's The Fairy Queen, Mammon oversees a cave of worldly wealth, and in Milton's Paradise Lost, he's a fallen angel who values earthly treasure over all other things. In some readings, he is Hell's ambassador to England, which is scary in and of itself. Others say he's the metaphoric personification of the materialist spirit of the 19th century, and if that's the case, he's definitely survived and grown much stronger since then. If you've read Michael Haig's illustrated vampire story Mammon, you will also know that Mammon gathers an army of vampires with demon bone weapons to fight Satan himself. These are powers you don't want to mess with, no matter what iteration of Mammon you're dealing with. Money is power after all. And finally at number 1, we have Nidhogg, the Curse Striker, he who strikes with malice. Nidhogg is the greatest threat to the Tree of Life. A dragon serpent who spends his days gnawing at the roots of the world tree Yggdrasil, this is the embodiment of the destructive elements in the universe. Its body is covered in bright scales with great horns upon its head. It has 4 legs with massive claws to rip at the roots of the tree, causing great injury to the tree that holds the 9 worlds of the cosmos. These ruinous actions have cataclysmic repercussions, as it is said that Nidhogg intends to pull the cosmos back into chaos. In fact, Nidhogg has a very prominent role in Ragnarok, the downfall of the cosmos. Once it chews through the roots anchoring Yggdrasil, it would fly out from beneath to aid the giants in the destruction of the universe as we know it. In the meantime, this dastardly dragon is said to preside over a part of the underworld known as the Shore of Corpses, punishing perjurers, murderers, adulterers, and oath breakers. Hopefully this job can keep Nidhogg busy for a while. Although if it is to break free, you can bet that Nidhogg will carry all sorts of criminals onto the surface with it. Coming in at number 5, we've got Danny/Malfador. Well, we'll kick it off pretty simple with a throwback to the horror movies of the 80s. Witchboard is a Ouija-themed romp through the mean streets of California, ranging from house parties to construction sites to an ever-infamous lake sequence. It's pretty cheesy, but there are definitely some good bits if you're into 80s horror. We kick off the introduction to evil presences with a good old-fashioned group session. While her boyfriend is off getting drunk, Linda gets her hands on her ex's Ouija board and summons a presence in front of a crowd, and that is not a euphemism. The partygoers meet Danny, a young boy who died a tragic death and is now communicating with everyone through the board. Things get heated between Linda's current and ex-boyfriends, which results in Danny slashing the tires of a car. Whoops. Danny's still a good kid though. The next day, Linda decides to call up Danny again and see how he's doing, but this time she brings out the board all alone without any guidance. Bad call, as the presence that shows up says he's Danny but is hiding his true identity. Always a bad sign. The presence helps Linda find her engagement ring and never gets dismissed. This means it can stick around and do what it wants, wherever it wants, whenever it wants. And what it wants is to kill any and everyone who might get in its way. See, this presence that claimed to be Danny on the second day was actually that of Carlos Malfador, an evil spirit. The man was an axe murderer in life, gunned down by police while trying to escape capture. As it turns out, he lived in Linda's house way back before she moved in. He'd been waiting for an opportunity to possess someone for ages, and this was the perfect time. Using progressive entrapment, he slowly but surely works towards being able to take over Linda and enter back into the living world. This results in plenty of death and destruction along the way, including almost getting her boyfriend arrested for the murders. So while you're using a Ouija board, do some research about where you're using it. If a bunch of nasty stuff occurred at your location, don't do it. Also keep an eye out for demons pretending to be other people. That one's a little harder to make sure of though. Coming in at number 4, we've got Kelly. This name doesn't sound so bad, but if you like your head to remain upon your shoulders, avoid it at all costs. Seriously though, this demon is sending out all of the warning signals possible, so if you end up dead, it really is your fault. She first showed up when a young lad was trying out Ouija with his older brother and cousin. They set up the board, got things ready to rock, and began to ask questions. With the lights out and candles lit, things were about to get spooky. And spooky things got. The young lad had a doll with him at the time, and this doll went by the name of Kelly. Uh-oh. Of course, it was good to have such a figure for comfort while doing something so potentially scary, so when the planchette started moving, he reached for his doll. However, Kelly was missing in action. Panicked, the kid looked back to the board and saw that it was spelling something. K-E-L-L-Y. Oh my goodness. Soon after, the ritual ended and the boys were considerably shaken. The youngest one looked frantically for his doll, but to no avail. However, later she was found, without her head. Someone or something had taken the doll, popped its dome off, and hidden the pieces away. If you ask me, this is a kind of warning, a sign of things to come. The next time you try to use a Ouija board around here, the demon might spell your name. And then your head might go missing. Not the kind of injury that's easy to recover from, yeah?
Coming in at number 3, Anna Eklund. Anna Eklund is a pseudonym for Emma Schmidt, an American woman whose alleged demonic possession and exorcism occurred over several decades, culminating in an extensive exorcism that lasted from August to December of 1928 in Erling, Iowa. In her early years, Emma reportedly began exhibiting signs of possession during her adolescence, demonstrating revulsion of holy objects, disturbed thoughts, and inability to enter churches. She also began to take part in unspeakable sexual acts. According to an account published back in 1935, the believed source of Emma's possession was her aunt Mina, a reputed local witch who placed spells on herbs she would prepare Eklund's food with. On June 18, 1912, she reportedly underwent an exorcism by Father Theophilus Reisinger, a Capetian priest from Germany. Little is known about the exorcism, however, Emma was not consulted for over 2 decades after the 1912 exorcism. In the summer of 1928, Reisinger was again consulted to perform a second exorcism on Emma, who was taken to a convent on August 17, 1928, and reportedly exhibited numerous symptoms, including falling into fits of rage over food that had been sprinkled with holy water and hissing like a cat. The exorcism thus began on August 18th, which was reportedly violent, with Emma levitating, howling, and hanging from the frame of the doorway. The session lasted until the 26th of August, with a second session occurring between September 13th and September 20th, followed by a final 8-day session that lasted December 15th to December 23rd, 1928. The exorcism resulted in the deterioration of Emma's body, as she refused to consume food and also vomited foul debris. Emma was believed to be possessed by Judas Iscariot, as well as Jacob, her own father. On the final day of the exorcism, the demons were commanded out, and Emma collapsed on her bed and began to shriek, Beelzebub, Judas, Jacob, Mina, followed by hell, hell, hell. She then opened her eyes and praised the Lord. Coming in at 2, George Lukens. Also known as the Yatten demoniac, he was a tailor infamous for his alleged demonic possession and the subsequent exorcism that occurred in 1788, when he was aged 44, thus causing controversy in England. On Saturday, 31st of May 1778, the Reverend Joseph Easterbrook, the Anglican vicar of Temple Church, was summoned by Miss Sarah Barber, a woman who was travelling in the village of Yatten Mendip, in the county of Somerset. The woman apparently told the pastor that she came across a man by the name of George Lukens, a tailor and common carrier by profession, who for the first 18 years of his life had been subject to atypical seizures, which Lukens believed resulted from a supernatural slap, which knocked him down while he was acting a Christmas pageant. Following the incident, members of the community began to think Lukens was bewitched, and he himself declared that he was possessed by 7 demons, who could only be driven out by 7 clergymen. The Reverend contacted the Methodist ministers, who agreed to pray for Lukens. I quote, "Some time ago I had a letter requesting me to make one of the 7 ministers to pray over George Lukens. I cried out before God, Lord, I am not fit for such work. I have not faith to encounter a demonic. It was powerfully applied, God in this thy might. The day before we were to meet I went to see Lukens and found such faith that I could then encounter the 7 devils, which he said tormented him. I did not doubt but deliverance would come. Suffice to say, when we met, the Lord heard a prayer and delivered the poor man. During the possession, Lucans claimed he was the devil himself, made barking noises, sung an inverted Te Deum, and was incredibly violent. However, the exorcism was a success, with Lucans stating, "Blessed Jesus," praised God and recited the Lord's prayers as the demons departed his body. And finally coming in at number 1, Clara Germana Silly. Clara was a South African woman who in 1906 was said to be possessed by a demon. She is said to have been possessed when she was 16 years old. She is said to have been possessed when she was a 16-year-old schoolgirl at St. Michael's Mission in Natal, South Africa. According to reports, at 16 years old she made a pact with Satan, and this is said to be the cause of her demonic possession. I mean, makes sense to me. In an account written by a nun, Clara was said to be able to speak languages of which she had no previous knowledge. Classic devil business if you ask me. She apparently could speak and understand Polish, German, French, Norwegian, and all other languages. The nun also reported that Clara demonstrated clairvoyance by revealing the most intimate secrets and transgressions of people she had no contact with. Not only that, but she could not bear the presence of blessed objects and seemed imbued with extraordinary strength and ferocity. Her cries also had a savage bestiality about them. I quote, "No animal had ever made such sounds, neither the lions of East Africa nor the angry bulls. At times it sounded like a veritable herd of wild beasts orchestrated by Satan had formed a hellish choir." According to eyewitnesses, the girl was said to have levitated 5 feet into the air, sometimes vertically and sometimes horizontally. When sprinkled with holy water, the girl was reported to have come out of the state of her satanic possession. In at number 5, Akamana. Hailing from Zoroastrian mythology, Akamana, the demon of sensual desires, was sent by Ahriman to seduce the prophet Zoroaster. His name quite literally means mana made evil. In this case, the word mana represents the mind. Throughout history, many have referred to him as the demon of evil intention, evil mind, evil purpose, or even evil thinking. And his job? Simply to prevent people from fulfilling their moral duties, i.e. being a good person. In the Shahnameh, Akamana is described as having long hair, blue eyes, and a head like an elephant with a mouthful of tusks instead of teeth. Lovely. In one of the tales, the demon traps Rostam while the hero is asleep, and he carries him up into the sky. He then asks Rostam whether he would prefer to be thrown upon a mountain or into the sea. Rostam, aware that the demon's mind is perverse, asks to be thrown upon a mountain, and the demon in response throws him into the sea. Rescuing himself from the waters, Rostam recovers his horse and confronts the demon again, subsequently beheading it. Lovely stuff. Coming in at number 4, Abyzou. Hailing from Jewish mythology, Abyzou is a female demon believed to be responsible for miscarriages, stillbirths, and infant mortality. Now, she is said to be motivated by envy, as she herself is infertile. She is often pictured on amulets with fish or serpent-like attributes. However, her fullest literary depiction is the compendium of demonology known as the Testament of Solomon, which dates back to as early as the 1st century AD. Now, in the Testament of Solomon, Abyzou is described as having, I quote, "a greenish gleaming face with disheveled serpent-like hair, with the rest of her body covered completely in darkness." In the book, the speaker, King Solomon, encounters a series of demons, binds and tortures each in turn, and inquires into their activities. Now, put to the test, Abyzou says she does not sleep, instead wanders the world looking for women about to give birth. Given the opportunity, she will strangle newborns. She also claims to be the source of many other afflictions, including deafness, eye trouble, obstructions of the throat, madness, and bodily pain. So Solomon ordered that she be chained by her own hair and hung up in front of the temple in public view. Yikes. Yeah, this demoness is trouble, and if she were real, the world would be absolutely awful. Coming in at number 3, we have Payment from Hereditary. Payment is a spirit named in the Lesser Key of Solomon and is one of the kings of Kinistan, more obedient to Lucifer than most others, and has 200 legions of demons under his rule. He is said to have a great voice and roars as soon as he comes, speaking in this manner for a while, until the conjurer compels him, and then he answers the questions he has been asked. Payment teaches all arts, philosophy and sciences, and secret things. He can reveal all mysteries of the earth, wind and water, what the mind is, and everything in between. However, although what he may offer is knowledge, this does not make him good. His depiction in the Ari Aster movie Hereditary should have taught us this. He is a duplicitous demon and perhaps one of the most devastating entities found in modern horror. In Hereditary, Paimon is summoned as a cult ritual by the deceased mother of Annie, played by Toni Collette, who is then forced to protect her family from Paimon's persuasions. The evil demon first targets the daughter Charlie before going after the son Peter, and of course Paimon invades the body. He commits unspeakable horrors that horror cinema hasn't been blessed with in a very, very long time. Coming in at number 2, the Cenobites, Hellraiser. To quote the Hell Priest Pinhead, explorers in the furthest regions of experience, demons to some, angels to others. And that is the perfect way to describe the Cenobites from the works of Clive Barker. The Cenobites are extra-dimensional beings who appear in Barker's works such as the Hellbound Heart, the Scarlet Gospels, and the 9 Hellraiser movies. It is said that they can only reach Earth's reality through a schism in time and space, which is opened and closed using certain unearthly artifacts, one of course being the puzzle box called the Lament Configuration. To quote Clive Barker in the Hellbound Heart, why then was he so distressed to set eyes upon them? Was it the scars that covered every inch of their bodies, the flesh cosmetically punctured and sliced and infibulated, then dusted down with ash? Was it the smell of vanilla they brought with them, the sweetness of which did little to disguise the stench beneath? Or was it as the light grew and he scanned them more closely, he saw nothing of joy or even humanity in their maimed faces, only desperation and an appetite that made his bowels ache to be voided? The Cenobites all have horrific mutilations and or body piercings, and wear fetishistic black leather that often resembles butchery garments or religious vestments. Now, aside from their grotesque physical depictions, the Cenobites are terrifyingly potent. They come from a disturbing labyrinth where sadomasochism and torture rule. Their ultimate goal is to drag the victims who open the special puzzle box back to their violent netherworld to suffer endless torture. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Pazuzu, the Exorcist. In ancient Mesopotamian religion, Pazuzu was the king of the demons of the wind, brother of Humbaba and son of the god Hambi. He also represented the southwestern wind, the bearer of storms and drought. Now, although Pazuzu is himself considered to be an evil spirit, he drives and frightens away other evil spirits, therefore protecting humans against plagues and misfortunes. However, don't get your hopes up because this dude is straight up evil. He was, of course, the evil spirit that possessed a young Regan MacNeil in the 1971 novel The Exorcist, as well as the subsequent movie. In the movie, Pazuzu is both named as the demon antagonist of Regan and the unwitting helper of Father Philip Lamont, as he seeks to free Regan from the demon's grip. It should be said that no cinematic demon has ever been more potent or terrifying than that of Pazuzu, aside from maybe the red tongue-licking demon in Insidious. Not a fan of that one, not a fan at all. Now in The Exorcist, Pazuzu finds its way to the US after being discovered during an archaeological dig in the Middle East. There it infiltrates the body of Regan, with the intention of subsuming her soul. Lovely stuff, isn't it? Pazuzu in turn makes Regan commit some unspeakable acts, such as stabbing herself with a crucifix in areas that we won't mention here, and of course attacking her own mother, before aggressively vomiting up green pea soup. And then of course the infamous scene of Regan spinning her head 180 degrees. What a lovely sight. This 1973 Best Picture winner is still one of the highest grossing films ever made. However, saying that, it is best to steer clear of Pazuzu. There's no need to invoke him, especially not in the middle of the night in front of your mirror. Just cover that thing with a sheet.
Almighty Lord, Word of God the Father, Jesus Christ, God and Lord of all creation, gave to your holy apostles the power to tramp underfoot serpents and scorpions.
Of all the supernatural beings that humans have alleged to come into conflict with, there's perhaps none as terrifying as the demon.
Yeah, you know, a demon can possess you, make you act against your own interests, even hurt the people around you that you care about. And as if that weren't enough, they can also lay claim to your mortal soul, giving you an eternity of pain from which you cannot escape.
Some of these demons are so terrifying that the Pope himself would have trouble summoning the faith required to effectively fight them.
Yeah, big guy with the hat.
Hello, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Taylor. And though we've gotten used to our heads spinning around while we hurl up pea soup, after so long possessed by evil while trapped in this dark dimension, nothing could have prepared us for the terror of this list.
These are the top 5 terrifying demons that the Pope tried to warn you about.
Number 5, Marchicha Corici. Now, when demonic possession is the leading symptom, you don't go to WebMD, you call the cloth, and you send a man with a fancy little black case and a crucifix to come excise the demons from your soul and your mortal body. That's basic stuff. But what happens when demonic possession occurs to someone inside the church? You don't hear about that a lot. What's the protocol? Well, in the case of Marchicha Corici, that is exactly what happened. This young woman was a member of the convent living in Romania sometime in the 20th century, when she became the unwilling host to a hostile demon that had moved in and paid first and last for rent inside her body. She believed that not only was she possessed by a demon, but that she was being spoken to directly. The devil was using her head as a landline, and she was being whispered demonic thoughts and threats all hours of the day. I can imagine that would be so exhausting. I get tired of my own thoughts. Can't imagine having to hear Satan's every little thought too. Now, initially she was being treated for possible schizophrenia, but when that didn't take care of the problem, the church sent an agent in to clear out the demonic presence. She was offered a little bit of holy water to drink, but gagged it up and was then restrained to be exorcised. Now, in my opinion, I feel like that's a bad test. I can't imagine holy water is really that refreshing. I wouldn't know, never had it. Maybe it's like San Pellegrino, I don't know. Anyway, she was bound to a cross and was gagged with a wet cloth soaked in holy water and subjected to round-the-clock exorcising over the course of 3 days. Now, she wasn't fed during this time, nor were any of her medical needs tended to, and shockingly, Marchicha would pass from her conditions, leaving this earth a free soul, if for nothing else. Now, the priest involved in the exorcism would later undergo investigation, and he would insist that he was innocent from his involvement with Marchicha's death, as he was simply trying to cure her the way God intended, and her death was an unfortunate incident as a result of the process. Yeah, sure, but isn't the point of an exorcism to, get the ghosts and demons out there so the host can go on living? In the end, the courts ruled that Marchicha's death was due to adrenaline injections when she was taken into hospital care. And if you're looking for way more stories of exorcism, demons, cryptids, true crime, fake crime, just about all that scary stuff, we've got all of that and then some. Hit the bell, subscribe, and don't miss a scream, but do that after the end of this video, okay? We got way more exorcisms and demons coming up for you.
Number 4. The Exorcisms of John Paul II. Being the Pope is not an easy gig. I mean, I'm assuming it isn't. You're always having to wear funny hats while living in a gigantic palace. You're having to pray for the people of the world constantly, and as someone who is traditionally believed to be God's personal representative on earth, and due to papal infallibility, is believed by many Catholics to be incapable of making mistakes. In addition to all this, the Pope has to find time to drag race his Pope-mobile and get poked with a stick by his men to make sure that he is still alive. As if that weren't enough, he also has to perform exorcisms from time to time. One of the popes with the most direct battles with the devil under his belt is St. John Paul II. When John Paul II wasn't busy ignoring church scandals and preaching that divorced women who remarried would go to hell, he was also known for doing battle with Satan. He performed his first exorcism as Pope on March 27, 1982, when a bishop brought forward a young woman named Francesca Fabrizi, hoping that the Pope could assist her in her issues. Upon seeing the Pope, she fell to the ground and started writhing uncontrollably while sobbing. The Pope tried to comfort her, but she didn't calm down until he said, quote, "Tomorrow, I will say a mass for you." This apparently worked and she was freed, but dude, you're the Pope. Why wait until tomorrow to help? Anyways, Francesca later visited the Pope a few years later with her husband and children to show how much better she was doing. It apparently prompted John Paul to say, quote, "I've never seen anything like this before. It was a biblical scene." In the year 2000, John Paul performed another exorcism in St. Peter's Square when a woman was brought into the square and immediately began yelling and lunging at the Pope, requiring 10 people to hold her down as she drooled and yelled blasphemies. The Pope finished his weekly address and requested to meet the young woman. At the sight of him, her eyes rolled back and she started screaming to be left alone. Old JP performed the exorcism, blessing her several times, but this case needed follow-up from Father Gabriel Amorth, the Vatican's chief exorcist, and the inspiration for the soon-to-be-released horror film, The Pope's Exorcist. I guess the moral is, if you're a demon who doesn't want to be exorcised, maybe don't go to the Vatican.
Coming in at 3, Lilith. Lilith is a female figure in Jewish mythology, often envisioned as a dangerous demon of the night who is sexually wanton and who steals babies in the darkness. In Jewish folklore, Lilith appears as Adam's first wife, who was created at the same time and from the same clay as Adam. The writing goes on to suggest that Lilith left Adam after she refused to become subservient to him and would not return to the Garden of Eden after she had coupled with the archangel Samuel Daniel. I quote, "They tried to take her back, but she refused. They asked her, 'Why don't you want to go back?' She told them, 'I know that I was created for the sole purpose of making babies, ill from their day of birth until their 8th day, when I have permission, and after 8 days I have no permission. I cannot return because of what is said in the Torah, and the great demon has already slept with me.'" Savage Lilith, but respect. In Sumerian texts, Lilith is thought to be the demon of waste places who originally lived in the garden of Sumerian goddess Inanna, queen of heaven. I quote, "Years passed, the tree matured and grew big, but Inanna found herself unable to cut down the tree, for at its base the snake who knows no charm has built its nest. In its crown the zoo bird, a mythological creature which at times wrought mischief, had placed its young. In the middle Lilith, the maid of desolation, had built her house, and so poor Inanna, the light-hearted and ever joyful maid, shed bitter tears. As the dawn broke, and her brother, the sun god Utu, arose from his sleeping chamber, she repeated to him tearfully all that had befallen her, Halupa tree." I mean, I kind of wish Lilith was real. She sounds like an absolute badass. Coming in at number 2, Abaddon. The Hebrew term Abaddon and the Greek equivalent Apollyon appear in the Bible as both a place of destruction and an angel of the abyss. However, in the Hebrew Bible, Abaddon is used with reference to a bottomless pit, often referring alongside the place Sheol, meaning the realm of the dead. Moving into the New Testament, the book of Revelation, Abaddon is described as the king of an army of locusts, also known as the angel of death. Back to Revelation though. In Revelation 9:11, Abaddon is described as destroyer, the angel of the abyss, and as the king of a plague of locusts, resembling horses with crowned human faces, women's hair, lion's teeth, wings, iron breastplates, and a tail with the scorpion stingers that torments for 5 months anyone who does not have the seal of God on their foreheads, which we all don't have, so we're all royally To quote Reb 911, Abaddon, that is perdition or destruction, the locusts are supernatural instruments in the hands of Satan to torment, and yet not kill, the ungodly under this 5th trumpet. Just as in the case of godly Job, Satan was allowed to torment with Elephantius, but not to touch his life. While most writings simply equate Abaddon to a place within the underworld, the description has been extended by Louis Ginsburg, who describes hell as being comprised of 7 divisions: Sheol, Abaddon, Be'er Shahat, Tit Hayowen, Moet, Shari Samawet, and Gehenna, each sitting atop one another. Also, I'm sorry if that is all wrong. These words aren't real. And finally, coming in at number 1, Satan. The name Satan is derived from a root meaning to oppose or to be or to act as an adversary. Now in some cases he is not necessarily malevolent, and he may have actually been sent by the Lord to prevent worse harm. What we know is that Satan possesses no real demonic qualities in the original text. However, he is an entity in the Abrahamic religions that seduces humans into sin or falsehood. He is typically depicted as a fallen angel or a jinn who used to possess great piety and beauty, but rebelled against God, who nevertheless allows him temporary power over the fallen world and a host of demons. In Judaism, Satan is regarded as a metaphor for the Yetzer Hara, or evil inclination, or as an agent subservient to God. The most common English synonym for Satan is devil, and in the book of Revelation, Satan is the supernatural ruler of the Roman Empire, and the ultimate cause of all evil in the world. Lovely stuff, but stop trying to steal my thunder. Now moving forward into the early modern period, Christians began to regard Satan as increasingly powerful, and the fear of Satan's power became a dominant aspect of the worldview of Christians across Europe. Entering the modern era, belief in Satan and demonic possession remains strong among Christians in the United States, specifically the United States. According to a 2013 poll, 57% of people in the US believe in a literal devil. That's far too many people. I'm shook. Shooketh.
Starting with number 5, we have Behemoth. No, not the ride at Canada's Wonderland. I'm talking about the mythological beast that dates back to the beginning of mankind, and whose name is now an adjective for any large or powerful being. The name Behemoth originated historically from the archaic Jewish name for hippopotamus, and is described as a beast from the biblical book of Job. He is a form of the primeval chaos monster created by God at the beginning of creation, being paired up with the other chaos monster Leviathan. And according to later Jewish tradition, both would become food for the righteous at the end time. Hey, if I wind up qualifying as righteous, can I have a funnel cake instead? Once again, not any kind of reference to the theme park. These beings came first, but now I'm kinda in the mood to tackle a roller coaster. While I've established that Behemoth was a brutish beast known for incredible strength, legend says he was originally created to help stabilize the world, and is known to create chaos in humans' lives, just like my roommate. He is said to take the form of a colossally large elephant with pitch black eyes covered in white scales that appear to be falling off, and has teeth the size of Mount Everest. Yeah, that's a little too big for my liking. The direct quote from the Book of Job that I mentioned earlier is as follows. 15 Behold Behemoth, which I made as I made you, he eats grass like an ox. 16 Behold, his strength in his loins, and his power in the muscles of his belly. 17 He makes his tail stiff like a cedar, the sinews of his thighs are knit together. 18 His bones are tubes of bronze, his limbs like bars of iron. 19 He is the first of the works of God, let him who made him bring near his sword. 20 For the mountains yield food for him where all the wild beasts play. 21 Under the lotus plants he lies, in the shelter of the reeds and in the marsh. 22 For his shade, the lotus trees cover him, the willows of the brook surround him. 23 Behold, if the river is turbulent, he is not frightened. He is confident through Jordan rushes against his mouth. 24 Can one take him by his eyes, or pierce his nose with a snare? Behemoth and Leviathan make an appearance in Revelation 13, as they try to fight against God and can be only slain by God. Thessalonians 2:8, Revelation 19:19-20, both these beasts are extremely strong, unruly, and untamable in nature. In Revelation 13:11-12, then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns, like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. 12, he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. And that's enough Bible babble for right now. In 4th place, we have Vine, an Earl and King of Hell. This Earl commands a simple 36 legions of demons. Because I know y'all are gonna make me do the math for this one, a legion is anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 demons. So roughly between 108 to 216,000 demons. Where's my gold star for calculating that? And how are there so many demons? The significance of his name seems to be from the Latin word vinea, vine, which is also the name given to an ancient war machine made of wood and covered with leather and branches, used to overthrow walls. In terms of his appearance, once summoned, he will show up resembling a lion and holding a viper in his hands. Now, I don't do well with snakes, so if you request him to change said appearance, he will present in human form, with long black hair, black wings, and now holding a golden cane. I know there's people out there who might be attracted to this, present company included, but don't take that as encouragement to summon him. Known as one of the most difficult demons to summon and work with, he is also one of the only demons who can identify witches and warlocks without being previously informed about their abilities, along with having the ability to tell the past and future, which I can see is kinda tempting. Vine is insensitive to humanity and cares little for harming those who summon him, making him wildly unpredictable and dangerous to summon, along with having the power to take souls without requiring permission. I repeat, dangerous.
Coming in at number 3, we've got the Langsweer. As is the case with many Malaysian demons, this one is inextricably linked to childbirth. The Langsweer in particular is a demon born of spirits who died during childbirth. Some demons will seek out newborns, others will attack still pregnant women. If the spirit who died transforms into a demon, it will grow a very particular set of new features. Langsweer are known for their floor-length dark hair, long talons, and the ability to fly. Kinda like a harpy, but much more objectively awful. They spend most of their time flying around stealing fish from the nets of fishermen. Their long talons and flying capabilities make this an easy task. It robs food and money from the fishermen in the community, but at least it keeps them satiated most of the time. If a Langsweer decides it's had enough of fish, it might go off in search of an infant. Their absolute favorite food is newborn blood. It's like gourmet dining to them. Often the Langsweer will change form to get an infant, whether that means impersonating a nurse, midwife, or other human presence who can get close to a baby. If you ever suspect someone might be a Langsweer, look for a hole in the back of their neck. That's a sure sign the demon is looking for blood. Thankfully, this hole is also how you can kill the creature. Taking their talons and hair and pushing them into the hole can kill one of these monsters in an instant. Coming in at number 2, we've got Nidhogg. I won't judge if your first experience with Nidhogg was that hilarious fencing video game. To be totally honest, it was mine too. However, purge those happy thoughts from your head because this demon is nothing to be trifled with. Originating in Norse mythology, this is an enormous serpent who will always be threatening the fate of the world. It's large enough to wrap itself around the entirety of the world and constantly slithers around down there. Its constant consumption of corpses has earned it the title of the Terror of Corpses, which, while very metal, is upsetting the longer you think about it. While consuming all of these bodies, Nidhogg also tends to chomp at the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree, and when this tree falls, only bad things can follow. And finally at number 1 we've got Namazu. And to cap us off, another underground creature way too large to even picture. The creator of earthquakes, the king of catfish, Namazu. And when I say catfish, I don't mean people lying on their dating profile. I'm talking about an actual whiskered fish that lieth deep in the muck and mire. You're not going to want this one to latch onto your arm though, not even if you are a redneck noodling legend. This catfish should be left well alone because it's basically as big as a continent. Powerful enough to be the source of all earthquakes too. In Japanese lore, the Namazu lies in rest under their country. However, if it ever becomes angry, it will begin to thrash around, and you can guess what happens next. In order to prevent the destruction caused by these rage-fueled tantrums, it's said that a huge stone lays upon its back, which keeps it still. Well, at least until the deity watching over it loses focus, which is bound to happen from time to time. Because of the massive destruction some earthquakes caused in Japan, many started treating them as events meant to rectify some of humanity's sins. This also meant treating this legendary enormous catfish as a god of sorts. A god or a demon? You decide. Coming in at number 5, we've got Asmodeus. A lot of folks take great issue with some of those classic vices. You know the ones: sex, rock and roll, all plenty of fun, all the bane of Puritans and teetotalers across the globe. If you delve too deeply into any of the above, you could find yourself receiving plenty of disapproving looks. Too bad, considering how much folks tend to enjoy these things. Is it possible to have too much of a good thing? Hard to say, especially these days. Who knows when the good won't be available anymore. However, traditionally folks have looked down upon those consumed by lust, whether it be carnal, money-focused, or otherwise. Thankfully, you can blame a demon for all those urges. Isn't life funny that way? Who made up morality anyways? Why not just explain it all away by saying it's totally out of your control? Beautiful, it makes up for everything. So we've got Asmodeus, the supposed son of Adam, once an angel of harlotry. Of course, his angelic properties aren't really around anymore, as he fell from heaven and now lives as a demon in the underworld. With time, he became more well known for stuff like gambling and lust, and somehow became Lilith's husband, which is fun. The two of them, both labeled temptresses, produced all sorts of demonic babies to keep the fires of hell hot. There's also the famous story of Asmodeus killing 7 husbands in a row to keep one woman from consummating her marriage. Like, every time she got married, Asmodeus would show up and murk her husband before they could do the deed. But then she'd go out and get married again. At some point you think she'd learn and see a pattern and stop feeding her suitors to a demon, but hey, maybe she liked the demonic attention. Asmodeus is pretty wicked looking too. Rocking 3 hideous heads, this demon gets around by riding a dragon. This isn't his only look though, as he can appear as a few other forms to appeal to different types of people. I mentioned gambling before, and anyone with that kind of habit can thank Asmodeus for it. Gotta love it. Lastly, his powers do tend to get stronger in November, so once Halloween wraps up, be on the lookout. Lust might not stick around as easily once everyone puts away their sexy costumes, but hey. Coming at number 4, we've got Abezethibou. Rocking with another fallen angel here, we've got Abezethibou. A little tougher to say and spell, but just as scary and powerful. Raunchy as all hell too. See, Abezethibou left heaven at the same time as the devil himself and didn't take the fall that well. He used to be a flatterer of God, but once he took that trip to the down below, things got ugly. If you're familiar with the most legendary gaming villain of all time, you'll see some inspiration here. While falling, Abezethibou was used as a life raft of sorts by other fallen angels. They grabbed at his body and managed to take hold of one of his wings. This led to the feathered appendage being torn off, leaving our poor demon to be with only one wing. Eventually it did sort of grow back, but not as it was. Abezethibou is known for having a red, grotesque wing. That's how many recognize this demon. Badass, but probably really upsetting to deal with after many lifetimes of perfect angelic wings. Like I said, once he made it to hell, things went extra south. He rules over Tartarus, which is essentially hell jail. All of the worst reside here, suffering eternal torment in a cage of their own creation. How lovely. Abezethibou also has quite the command of sorcery, able to cast powerful spells and persuade influential figures to act in unholy ways. For these reasons and more, it was decided that this demon could no longer have sway over humanity. Abezethibou was eventually trapped in a pillar of air, meant to be trapped for eternity. Tough break for sure. However, many do believe that Abezethibou will return one day and bring with him thousands of years of fury after being trapped so long. His red wing will unfurl and he will return to his vengeful and cruel ways. Who's excited? Coming in at number 3, we've got the Dybbuk. Recently, there's been a surprising amount of talk about Dybbuk boxes. For an ancient, cursed object, there sure is a lot of interest in 2021. A lot of this has to do with people supposedly purchasing mystery boxes off the dark web and then opening them on camera as a sort of spectacle. Of course, this has played up a fair bit to encourage plenty of views, so one can assume anything they're watching on the so-called dark web on YouTube is probably fake. But a recurring theme inside of these large mysterious crates is Dybbuk boxes, ancient wine boxes meant to seal away vicious and evil spirits. Of course, the best way to deal with something like that is just leave it well alone. Don't break the wax seal, but that's not going to consistently happen now, is it? They open the box and 2012's Raimi produced The Possession and come face to face with a malevolent spirit that wants to possess a child. Once that thing is open, there is no going back. Apparently, after they wrapped shooting, a mysterious fire broke out in the prop warehouse, burning everything to the ground. Sheesh. You can also look to Post Malone's recent experience with a Dybbuk box at Zach Bagans' Paranormal Museum, where he claims he's been haunted ever since. With all the attention this demonic item has been getting recently, one has to wonder about the veracity of it all, but maybe don't try to find out for yourself. Coming to, we've got Beleth, the King of Cats. What a fantastic title for a demon to have, right? Folks who like to stay right up to date on horror programming might recognize that name. Recently featured in Netflix's Marianne, Beleth could be a lot of things. If we look to compendiums of demonology, Beleth is known as a fallen angel, one who leads 85 legions of demons and is a mighty and terrible king. When summoned, he's very angry, and if you show any fear, he'll never respect you again. The actual King of Cats bit doesn't seem to be mentioned anywhere outside of the Netflix series, but if we take these traits as true, he does seem very cat-like. Side note, a bottle of wine might mellow him into compliance, which is nice to know. But yeah, Beleth is supposedly a summonable demon, and one who could work with you if you play your cards right. But like with any demon, you've got to be careful, lest you give up your soul to this otherworldly entity. And coming in at number 1, we've got a haunted doll. And this time, it's not Annabelle. I just figure we've got a very complete knowledge of that tale from the Warren archives. This haunted doll made waves back in 2013 as it flew in the face of the idea that haunted dolls are ancient and made of cracked porcelain. Yep, this haunted doll was made in the image of the one and only Ice Queen, Elsa. A family decided it was time to get rid of the doll and tossed it. However, soon after, it reappeared within their home. It was programmed to sing bits of the song Let It Go, but eventually it stopped doing so and would only speak in Spanish. Understandably freaked out, the family once again attempted to rid themselves of the toy, but it came back again, this time appearing in the backyard. It's a determined little bugger, eh? These days, it's strapped to the front of a friend's truck and it hasn't found a way to escape yet. But we'll see how this demonic doll develops over time. Now that you're aware of these real demons, are you going to be living your life more carefully? Or does the presence of paranormal power encourage you to throw caution to the wind? Either way, it's always fun to learn more about this kind of thing. At number 5, we've got Balar, the Celtic demon king, the tyrant leader of the hostile and monstrous supernatural race known as the Fomorians, the one-eyed giant. Grow up. This is a demon well known throughout Celtic folklore. Balar, while being massively destructive, also graced the legends with some heroes through his lineage. In fact, one of the great legends, Luch, was his grandson. We'll look at that a little closer in a minute. Having one giant eye is cool and all, but Balar did more than just look around with it. After spying on the creation of an evil potion, his eye became poisonous. Anywhere Balar looks, destruction follows. When opened, it allows an entire army to be overwhelmed by just a few soldiers. It lays waste to the countryside. It petrifies brave men. There are 7 coverings to protect it and keep it cool, each so heavy that they require 4 strong men to open it. Each layer unleashes a new level of power. It's said that when 1 is opened, the bracken begins to wither. At 2, the grass becomes copper colored, and with 3, the woods and timber begin to heat. 4 causes smoke to rise from the trees. 5, everything grows red, and at 6, it will spark. Once all 7 are wide open, everything in sight of the eye will catch fire. As such, Balar is considered to be the personification of drought, blight, and the scorching sun. Eventually he was indeed killed by his grandson, and even after being killed, continued to wreak havoc. His decapitated head burned a giant hole in the earth, and his massive body killed 27 men beneath it when he fell. That's a lot of damage. Coming in at number 4, we have Encanis. This demon hails from the Kingkiller Chronicle, Patrick Rothfuss's masterful fantasy epic. Encanis is the enemy of the god figure Telu. He is the most powerful demon in all existence, with a face in shadow and a voice like a knife in the minds of men. Before being hunted down, Encanis roamed the world, bringing chaos and destruction wherever he went. In the famous story of their final altercation, he was chased by Telu for 8 days. In the first 6, he destroyed 6 great cities. Only on the 8th day was he captured and bound to an iron wheel before being burned alive. Even then he broke free and had to be held tight by the wrists to the wheel by Telu himself. Then both he and the gods were killed and sent on to oblivion. Even after death in this legend, his influence remained as a blight upon the earth. It's implied that the legendary hero Lanre, who could single-handedly turn the tide of a battle, sought out Encanis' forbidden knowledge in order to bring his love back from the dead. The knowledge he found broke him mentally and damned him to eternal life. This evil information corrupted him, causing him to destroy much of what he protected in the past, and he could even still be living on today as leader of the Chandrian. Such distorting power, still being accessible thousands of years after death, proves the immense power of Encanis and the true belief in the destruction he holds.
Now, number 3, Exorcism TV. Now, while exorcisms have served as the inspiration for more than a few Hollywood movies about ghost hunters, it's rare that us, the general plebes and public, ever get a look behind the curtain and get to see what a real exorcism is like in all its ugliness. Well, in 1991, in a controversial move by the Vatican, Reverend James Labar oversaw an exorcism of a young woman named Gina, televised for your viewing pleasure to watch while you munch on a big tub of popcorn. Reverend Labar, before performing the exorcism, was quoted as saying, "We thought it was important for people to understand that the devil does exist, and most importantly, that the church means to help." He left out that it's just a total coincidence they're filming this and all that, and it's just out of the goodness of their heart. Now, if there's a slight waft of condescension in my narration, it's because this move was not without its controversy at all. A great number of detractors, both of the church and outside of it, argued that this was sensationalizing and exploitative of the young woman, whose problems were certainly not made better by having a camera crew pressed up against her and a boom mic hovering above her head. One critic decried the whole event and the Vatican, referring to the entire process as being regressive and medieval, propping up a mental patient for the entertainment of the masses on a Sunday. Now, the kicker is the young woman was a mental patient and was undergoing treatment for her intense psychological issues and psychotic episodes, and her family had insisted that these problems stemmed from a demon instead of a mental health struggle, but that doesn't make for good TV. The exorcism went off as planned, and the church declared it a success, with the Reverend being quoted as saying, "She is up and about, but not well." And the televised exorcism had nothing to do with that, I am sure. Now, if you're curious about hunting this clip down, it is available out there on YouTube, but I'll warn you, Googling Gina exorcism just pulls up results for the Real Housewives of Orange County, which honestly might be way more entertaining and more likely to contain a real demon in it, I feel. Number 2, Roland. 2 in a row, me again, hey. Doing a list about notorious demons that led to the church intervening in an exorcism would be rather incomplete if we didn't include the case of Roland Doe. The exorcism so infamous that it would end up being synonymous with the word exorcism, inspiring the legendary horror movie The Exorcist. And to a lesser extent the original novel the film was based on, but we don't read books here, those are for nerds. Now, the real case was mostly just inspiration for the film, because in actuality things are pretty different. For one thing, instead of Reagan, the host in question was a boy named Roland Doe, who may never have thrown up any pea soup or twisted his head 180 degrees, but definitely had a spiritual problem. As a youngster, Doe was a socially isolated boy who didn't spend much time with anyone else in the neighborhood, instead spending most of his time with his Aunt Harriet, who was fascinated by the occult and spirit worlds. For a birthday one year, she gave onto Roland a Ouija board and taught him how to use it and taught him of all the spirit world. This would invite troubles into his life. After Aunt Harriet would pass, it wasn't long before strange things started plaguing the Doe household. Growling from out of nowhere, furniture moving, Eventually a priest was called in to investigate and deduced that Roland had become a vessel. Now this exorcism was brutal, even by exorcism standards, which I guess is why it got made into a movie. When Roland was restrained, he managed to escape and slashed at the priest with a broken bed spring. On the boy's body, red scratch marks were spelling out Louis. So he was relocated to St. Louis to face even more exorcising. After a brutal battle by seasoned priests, Roland claimed he had a vivid dream of St. Michael battling against Lucifer for control of his soul in a divine field. Do you think he ever saw the movie afterwards though?
Number 1. This loser. In Germany in the 1930s, a new political party came into power, stoking the country's nationalism and pandering to xenophobia against the Jewish people of the country in order to justify horrible atrocities and efforts to invade other countries, thus kicking off the Second World War. This political party was called the National Socialist Germans Worker Party, but most people refer to them as idiots. Their leader, Hitler, was an evil man who led his country into fascism, caused the extermination of more than 6 million Jewish lives, and started a war that led to between 70 to 85 million people dying. In the face of all the harm this art school reject caused, many people wonder how it is possible for one man to have been so evil. Some have theorized that he was a sociopath, and others have said that anyone is capable of such atrocities if they are given the authority and power to act against those they have prejudice against. But others believe there was another element of a more supernatural nature at play. Some people thought that the Fuhrer was so evil because he was possessed by a demon. One of the people who thought this was the Pope. Vatican documents released in 2006 showed that the Pope of the era, the Venerable Pius XII, believed that little Dolphy was diabolically possessed. One of the requirements for an exorcism is that it is carried out in the physical presence of the afflicted party with their expressed consent. But as Pius was concerned about the mass exterminations taking place, he decided to take a literal Hail Mary approach against Hitler's attempts to take over the world. In the privacy of his private chambers, Pius performed a long-distance ritual of liberation of the devil on the German leader, hoping that God would expel the devil from the mustachioed twerp and bring an end to the atrocities that were being committed. Whether it be because the Pope's long-distance prayer powers weren't up to snuff, or because the evil in question was human in nature rather than demonic, the exorcism failed and the war continued, despite the Pope's hope for divine intervention.
Coming in at number 5, Roland Doe/Robbie Mannheim. In the late 1940s in the United States, priests of the Roman Catholic Church performed an exorcism on a boy referred to as Roland Doe or Robbie Mannheim. The 14-year-old boy was the victim of demonic possession, and the events were recorded by the attending priest. These events were in turn used as elements in the 1971 novel The Exorcist. According to reports, the family experienced strange noises, furniture moving on its own accord, and ordinary objects such as vases flying or levitating when the boy was nearby. The family were forced to turn to a priest and an exorcism was conducted. During the exorcism, the boy allegedly slipped one of his hands out of the restraint, broke a bed spring from under the mattress and used it as a weapon, slashing the priest's arm. A second exorcism was forced to take place, during which time it was reported that words such as evil and hell along with other various marks appeared on the boy's body. Moreover, Roland broke the priest's nose, and following the rite, Roland Doe went on to lead a rather ordinary life. Good for him. Coming in at number 4, Michael Taylor. Michael Taylor's name became known in England in 1974 as a result of the Ossett murder case and his alleged demonic possession. Taylor lived in West Yorkshire, working as a butcher, and in 1974 his wife Christine stated to a Christian fellowship group to which Taylor belonged that his relationship with the leader of the group, Mary Robinson, was carnal in nature. Taylor also admitted that he felt evil within him and eventually attacked Robinson verbally. His behavior began to get more erratic, resulting in the local vicar calling in other ministers to cast out the demons residing inside the man. An exorcism occurred on October 5th and 6th in 1974 at St. Thomas Church in Garber. According to an authority on folklore and the occult, Bill Ellis, the exorcists believed that they had, in an all-night ceremony, invoked and cast out at least 40 demons, including those of incest, bestiality, blasphemy, and lewdness. At the end, exhausted, they allowed Taylor to go home, although they felt at least 3 demons, insanity, murder, and violence, were still left inside of him. When he returned home, Michael Taylor brutally murdered his wife, Christine, as well as their poodle. He was later found by policemen naked in the street, covered in blood. He was ultimately acquitted on the grounds of insanity and was sent to Broadmoor Hospital for just 2 years, before being found guilty of indecently touching a young girl. He was once again ordered into psychiatric treatment.
Middle of the pack. In third place, we have Abyzou. If your first response was to say bless you, we have the same sense of humor. You may be familiar with references made to him in The Exorcist and the House of Ashes video game, but we're not talking about Linda Blair's acting today. As an apotropaic entity, he was considered both a destructive and dangerous wind, but also a repellent to other demons, one who might safeguard the home from their influence if he was in the right mood. Remember, if he was in the right mood. Kinda like me sometimes. He is quoted as introducing himself by stating, "I am Abyzou, son of Anubu, king of the evil Lilu demons. I was enraged in violent motion against the strong mountains and ascended them." Lilu demons are the class to which Abyzou and his leagues of demons belong. There is also a notable connection to the earlier Babylonian personifications of the 4 winds. These beings, as depicted on several cylinder seals, have wings, and each represents a different direction of the north, south, east, and west winds. It's important to note that noted professor of ancient studies, Franz Wigerman, calls attention to the crooked positioning of the masculine west wind in seals. Franz Wigerman calls attention to the crooked positioning of the masculine west wind in seals, which is similar to the posture in Pazuzu's physical depiction. More connections appear in later seals, as this same bent-over figure takes on talons and a scorpion's tail. The main difference in their depictions is the head, and the conclusion was made that it is Pazuzu's body and not his head that denotes him as a wind demon. Another scholar, Scott Neweagle, asserts that Pazuzu's possession of 4 wings links to the term kipatu, meaning circle, loop, circumference, and totality, suggesting his control over all cardinal directions of wind was inherited from his predecessors. Abyzou was often depicted with a man's body, the head of a lion or a dog, talons for feet, 2 pairs of wings, a scorpion's tail, and a serpentine phallus. Around now you might be thinking, Abyzou is a long name, he has to have some sort of a, nickname or other moniker, right? Sure. He's been called the agony of mankind, suffering of mankind, or disease of mankind. Take your pick. This god of wind and plague is known as Lucifer's right-hand man, and has the power to control and rule over other evil spirits, being known to bring forth droughts and famine. It is said that he conspired with Lucifer to overthrow God, and they were thrown out of heaven together. He is fond of corrupting the innocent and good, being known to offer help that appears good and benevolent, but actually requires recipients to request more of his assistance, sending them further and further into his debt, sentencing them to an afterlife of eternal agony. See, reality is agony enough, so I'll pass. Our runner-up for today is Surgat, first mentioned in history in 1517, whose deceptive and cunning mind make him one of the most tricky demons you could possibly think of summoning. Due to his name, he is associated closely with Saturdays. Sure, he might be the least known demon on this list, lacking the background detail that emphasizes the other demons, but he is still very much to be feared. He is known as the one who can open all locks, which may seem a little silly on the surface level, but once summoned, he is impossible to escape or to conceal yourself from unless it's on his terms. Targets of Surgat are relentlessly pursued until found, and then presented with imagery until they go mad. He was the last demon to be summoned by known demon hunter and documentarist Pope Honorarius in his grimoire. Honorarius had thoroughly documented the strengths and weaknesses of every demon he summoned during his research into the oncoming War Against Demons, but had only written ability to open locks about Surgat before his untimely death, leaving history to believe Surgat was responsible for this event. Now, I'm not going to spell out how to summon him, because I hope I've made it clear enough by now that I exist to discourage that kind of behavior, but I did find it kind of neat that one would need a nail from an old coffin to do so. Oh, and before I forget, Surgat is invisible when he manifests, making him easy to lose track of. And in first place, we have Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, Lord of Dung, and God of Filth himself. He is described visually as a smaller and hunched over creature with red or purple skin, ram horns, a forked tongue, and a long tail, along with incredibly powerful wings. Kinda sounds like a D&D character. He often prefers to appear as a fly when summoned, which may sound innocent until you consult history. Flies were believed to have been born from rotting flesh and plagues. According to Christian beliefs, he began his career as a false god, convincing men to worship him and trick them, so he could give faulty advice that would harm instead of helping those in need. Before in the comments asks for a Bible citation, since I haven't been including them for all of the listings today, I'll mention it now. In Mark 3:22, the scribes accused Jesus Christ of driving out demons by the power of Beelzebub, the prince of demons. The name also appears in the expanded version in Matthew 12:24, 27, and Luke 11:15, 18, 19, as well as in Matthew 10:25. Jesus knew their thoughts and said to them, "Every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand. If Satan drives out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then can his kingdom stand? And if I drive out demons by Beelzebul, by whom do your people drive them out? So then they will be your judges. But if I drive out demons by the Spirit of God, then the kingdom of God has come upon you." Funny. Hanging around this spooky stuff has me quoting the Bible more than I ever thought I would in my lifetime. Guess I should have paid more attention in my middle school religion classes, or when I was altar serving as a kid, instead of just figuring out the perfect angle to tip a candle at to splash wax on my arm. What? I never said I was a normal kid. Beelzebub is commonly described as placed high in hell's hierarchy. According to the stories of the 16th century occultist Johann Weyer, Beelzebub led a successful revolt against the devil, is the chief lieutenant officer of Lucifer, the emperor of hell, and presides over the Order of the Fly. And I thought I was a workaholic. The 17th century exorcist Sébastien Michaelis, in his admirable history, placed Beelzebub among the three most prominent fallen angels, the other two being Lucifer and Leviathan. John Milton, in his epic poem Paradise Lost, published in 1667, identified the unholy trinity of Beelzebub, Lucifer, and Astaroth, with Beelzebub as the second ranking of the many fallen angels, a quote from him claiming, "Satan except, none higher sat." In simple English, only second place is Satan here. His specialty is in tormenting mankind, causing wars, instigating murders, and known for his ability to place humans under the spell of other demons upon request. One thing historians haven't been able to settle on is which major sin he represents, with some claiming pride, others gluttony, but also some claim idolatry. Personally, since he allegedly originated from being a false god, I'm going to side with idolatry. But let me know in the comments which one you believe.
Coming in at number 5, we have Azazel from Fallen. Azazel is a fallen angel whose evil influence led to the total corruption of humanity. Isn't that fun? Due to being the leader among the fallen angels, the Jewish Book of Enoch commands its readers to ascribe all sin to him. His description has varied throughout history, with him originally being one of heaven's angels, a gloriously beautiful man with wings on his back. However, when he was cast down to earth and became fallen, his beauty became corrupted, in turn taking on a demonic appearance. Once cast down to earth, he became a leader of the Grimoire, a group of angels who married mortal women and produced a line of monstrous children. He then began teaching evil to humans, teaching mankind of warfare and the art of deception, before finally teaching us about witchcraft. Now, Azazel has had a big screen appearance in the 1998 crime drama Fallen, which follows homicide detective John Hobbs, who witnesses the execution of serial killer Edgar Reese. However, soon after the execution, the killings begin happening again. In the movie, Azazel evilly outwits Denzel Washington's character, with it being revealed that Azazel's true power is being able to jump from house to house with a passing touch. Coming in at number 4, we have Beelzebub. Beelzebub is a Semitic deity that was worshipped in the Philistine city of Ekron. He is often linked with Satan by Christians. In demonology, he is one of the 7 princes of the underworld. In Christian writings, the name Beelzebub appears as an alternate name to Satan, and like I said, is commonly described as a placed higher in the underworld's hierarchy. According to occultist Johannes Wierus, Beelzebub is the chief lieutenant of Lucifer, the emperor of the underworld, and presides over the Order of the Fly. Now, throughout history, there have been confirmed reports of Beelzebub here on Earth, with one of the last hailing from France. It began in the early 1600s when a young nun called Madeleine began having fits, shouting obscenities and making claims she had engaged in lewd sexual acts with demons and witches. It was ultimately decided that she was possessed by none other than Satan himself, aka Beelzebub. The possession only worsened from there, with them being forced to bring in Sebastian Michele, the local Grand Inquisitor, to aid in an exorcism.
Coming in at number 3, we've got Legion. One person can be many things, but in this case, one demon is actually many demons. And these demons were so nasty, so evil, that Jesus himself had to exorcise them. Holy smokes, right? Legion is quite popular in the pop culture pantheon, and many famous exorcisms and related events seem to use him as the prime example. With so many demons dwelling within one main demonic form, they can take over the souls of people relatively easily and with varied results. However, all of the demons that make up Legion act as a sort of hive mind. They all have the same knowledge, thoughts, and reactions to things, and if one demon from the collective experiences something, they're all aware of it. With all of that knowledge and the ability to spread out all over the place, Legion can be a terrifying adversary. And even though Jesus does manage to send Legion back to hell in the Bible, there isn't much guaranteeing that many parts of Legion can't come back. Most folks only experience Legion as individual parts too. This is when the demon is at its weakest, as each individual piece of the whole only holds so much power. Were Legion to assemble all of the many together, we could be in trouble. Imagine all the limbs. Coming in at number 2, we've got Vetus. Corruption. Such a classic human form of folly. We work so hard to avoid it and even do our best to prop up those who remain pure of heart and purpose, but corruption spreads pretty much no matter what. We can thank Vetus for that. Second in command to Lucifer himself, this is the demon who wants to tempt holy people away from their chosen path. Even the most pious has a chance of being drawn in by this demon. He works very hard at figuring out people's deepest desires and then encouraging them to pervert everything they believe in to achieve said goals. Oftentimes these desires are less than socially acceptable, and at worst they can be quite taboo. Does Vetus care that he's ruining lives? Probably not. He takes on different forms to be extra convincing and makes sure to really sweeten the deal whenever he can. However, there is a way you can tell if Vetus is trying to tempt you. He only speaks in rhyme. Interesting, right? Hold on, there's a form of communication that almost exclusively communicates in rhyme and tells people to act in all sorts of wild and depraved ways. Music! Pop music specifically, but hey, do you think that Vetus is communicating with modern folks through the tunes we so often hear on the radio, telling us to consume, to cavort, to consummate? That's insidious. And finally at number 1, we've got Beelzebub. Speaking of music, how many songs explicitly reference Beelzebub? I can think of 2 right now, Bohemian Rhapsody and Beelzebos. I'm sure there are plenty more, but you can drop those in the comments. As you do that, I'll continue on my way talking about this demon. Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, the devil, but also maybe not the devil. There's so much to say about this particular demon and so little time in which to do it. I'll see what I can do with what we've got today. So the Lord of the Flies may be associated with literature read in schools these days, but back before we had a tale of British boys losing their minds on an island, that association with insects was filthy. Ruling over flies meant you had domain over demonic excrement and rot. Not a good thing, right? Throughout history, people have blamed Beelzebub for all sorts of things. He was closely associated with the Salem witch trials and cited often when folks were put to death. Plus, years after that was called off, he was again referenced in many exorcisms, both infamous and unknown. All of this pales in comparison to his actual standing in hell though, where he is known as the Prince of Demons, and rules over the other basement dwellers with an iron fist. His ultimate goal is to destroy the world, and it seems as though he's been planning this for ages, tricking people into worshipping false idols, commanding other infernal beings, and sowing seeds of discontent. Nobody's doing it quite like Beelzebub. I'd recommend learning a song wicked enough to defeat the devil, otherwise you're probably ending up going down to hell with him.